Folks, welcome to the Katie Phang News Channel. I had to bring this incredibly intelligent, motivated, and just damn inspiring young man, Isaiah Martin. He is a congressional candidate for the 18th district in Texas, but God knows what the heck that means anymore, Isaiah, frankly. But Isaiah Martin, thank you so much for joining me. You have been, I think, just a fortune teller. You've been a seer of things and how things are going to roll out in Texas. I find that to be a level of political astuteness that is not only necessary, but that's the reason why we need to have this conversation. I want my viewers here at the channel to understand the real nuts and bolts of what the hell is going on in Texas. I will say with some measure of pride, and it is in large part because of you and Olivia Juliana, y'all had really kind of raised this redistricting issue, and I'm going to call it gerrymandering because that's really what it is. The gerrymandering issue in Texas a long time ago, and we've been trying to get this front and center. I say percolating to the top of the news feed because frankly, there's so much going on. And I'll still emphasize Epstein files being released, but that's neither here nor there. But Isaiah, I went back and I checked the calendar. You and I were talking about this before we just started recording. July 16th, you and I did a Substack Live, and I specifically did that with you because you had said fighting fire with fire means breaking quorum, and that was one way to try to prevent the illegal gerrymandering that's going on even right now in Texas with the new electoral maps. They did it, man. About 62 Texas House Democrats left the state, and I won't use the verb flee. I agree. They didn't flee anything. They're not running scared. Let me be very clear here. But they left the state of Texas on Sunday after Saturday, the redistricting committee in Texas introduced a disgusting new map that would give 5 new congressional seats to the Republican Party. They've been nakedly partisan about it. I covered this on my channel yesterday, Isaiah. They said they don't give a shit. They're not pretending it's the DOJ excuse of racial gerrymandering to be fixed. They're saying flat out, we're going to take these seats for Republicans. Man, get us up to speed because you were arrested because of this.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know one thing about being arrested by Republicans, and ultimately they didn't like too much that I exposed them for what they were in front of their faces directly. I mean, ultimately what's going on in Texas is very clear. Republicans are down 8 points in the next midterm. They remember getting their ass kicked by 41 seats is how many they lost in 2018. And they have a memory about what's about to happen this year. So they're trying to go and get every seat they could possibly get. They're coming after Texas specifically because Greg Abbott is up for re-election. He knows that he needs to get the Trump endorsement for that election, and he can basically go and dangle that over his head and control him. So for folks that are wondering why specifically they chose Texas, it is because Greg Abbott is a lackey he can control.
Look, Abbott too, right? Paxton's a useful
right,
idiot too. He loves to be.
right,
I call them the law lackeys, the ones that do Trump's bidding, but in the law
right.
arena.
Absolutely, because Paxton as well is running for the U.S. Senate now, and he's vying for that Trump endorsement as well. So they were very specific about doing this, and they have no shame about it. And Katie, that's why I've always said, if Republicans have no shame, neither should we. And that's why it's so important to go and get them back in our states because it's the only way to really fight back against it.
And it's interesting because, and we'll talk about in just a little bit about this idea because I'm like I am a believer too, the fighting fire with fire. And Olivia and I talked about it this morning, which is I'm not sure why we have to be embarrassed, right? Why do we have to sit there and feel badly about mocking them for when they do the bad stuff? And also, again, these Dems, they're not running away from anything. They're just making a point. They are representing their constituents who are like, wait, you're stealing. You're stealing seats and you're adding seats and you're doing it to just gin up the system and game the system to your advantage.
Absolutely. And that's why I just think it's so important that we don't let Republicans gaslight us in this situation because it was Democrats who put forward national legislation to ban gerrymandering in all 50 states completely. And it was Republicans who blocked it. So at this point, not only did they block that legislation, they then went forward in their own states, whether it was Florida or North Carolina, and gerrymandered the heck out of them. So ultimately, if that's the level of playing field that we're dealing with, the only way that you got to get them back is to be shameless, just like them, and fight fire with fire.
And what's truly wackadoo about this whole thing? the DOJ sending that letter threatening to go after the state of Texas, and that was all just a cover, right? The
Right,
DOJ
right,
sent a letter courtesy of Harmeet Dillon, the head of the Civil Rights Division at the Trump
right.
DOJ. She sends a letter to Greg Abbott saying, you got 5, quote, racially gerrymandered congressional districts, and it's illegal, and so you got to fix it. That was the whole reason why this whole special session was called by
Right.
Abbott that started on July 21st. But the wackadoo thing is the map at issue, I'll call that map 1.0. That was a Republican drawn map. That was a
No.
Texas Republican drawn map that literally they just had a trial last month about the
Right.
legality of that. So think about that for a second. It takes at least 4 years to go to trial on that map. But now the Republicans in Texas are like, oh, yeah, by the way, yeah, that was a bad map. So why should anybody trust the Republicans to draw up a good and kosher map this time
Right.
around? Which, by the way, they just rolled that thing out on Saturday. On Saturday.
Right. What makes it even hilarious about it is that does anybody seriously believe that Greg Abbott would go and put a map together that the Republicans weren't going to be okay with? Absolutely not. And the reason why I know that is because I was a senior advisor for Congresswoman Jackson Lee. And at the time, they were trying to go and get rid of her congressional district and combine it with Al Green. It's basically what they're doing right now. And eventually the outrage was so much they eventually backed up. But the difference between this time and last time is now they're competing for the Trump endorsement. That is a central pillar that I don't think is getting talked about enough. These Republicans are competing for his endorsement. And so they will screw over anybody. They will draw out anybody because that is the most important thing for them.
Olivia also pointed out something that I did not pick up on, which is why I love speaking to you and Olivia, because you guys are truly boots on the ground, steeped deep in Texas state politics. Y'all really know what's going on. Olivia pointed out somebody like Katrina Pearson. Talk about a
Right.
blast from the past, not in a good way. Trump 1.0 lackey of her own. She had
Right.
kind of was like kind of on the down low, right? Like she was kind of
Right.
hanging out kind of quietly, kind of building a little bit of steam in
Uh-huh.
Texas. And Olivia pointed out to me, she lives in a newly drawn district. So, okay,
She
so then
sure
to get everybody
does.
caught up to speed now, we got MAP 2.0, which got introduced by the redistricting committee in the Texas State House on Saturday, which was the genesis of the 62 Democrats that left on Sunday. She lives in one of the newly drawn districts. And so you and I both
Yep.
know somebody's going to be running for office now.
Of
And
course.
that's why she's pushing so damn hard to have this map
100%.
deemed to be okay.
That's right. I mean, look, Katrina Pearson is Caroline Levitt before Caroline Levitt. You know, I honestly had forgot she even existed until I
Same,
saw her in that
same.
committee room. You know, and I saw her in that committee room and she's glaring at me. I don't know, or maybe she's seen me on social media talking mess about her, but who knows? But the craziest part is that these Republicans have no shame. It's not just Katrina. There's another guy by the name of Cody Bassut that's looking for a seat. There's another guy named Briscoe Kane in Texas, in Deer Park, that's looking for a seat. There's so many of them of why they're really doing it. So the conversation, I think, also needs to be, who are they looking to draw into these seats? And the Republicans clearly had their picks of who they wanted. And that's why they were very excited to go push this through. Because it would be an opportunity for them to run for Congress.
So I'm obsessed with the Texas Tribune. It's one of my favorite local journalism publications. And the Texas Trib noted that with this new map 2.0, Republicans would hold 80%, 79%. I rounded up to 80% of the seats. And that cannot be a fair and accurate apportionment of representation, especially when these congressional districts are in areas that are primarily communities of color. And so it's not just the sheer partisan party affiliation issues here. It's the stealing of representation for communities of color, which are the largest growing population in the state of
Mm-hmm.
Texas.
100%. I mean, that was their main focus. I mean, we heard over and over and over again in the hearing, and the way that they've like spliced these major cities to try to fit in additional Republican congressional seats. That's exactly what this is about. They're trying to go and split our communities and pit us against each other. It's crazy. Case in point, look at what they did, for example. You know, they took Acres Home, which is a big part of the 18th congressional district, always has been, the birthplace of our former mayor and former Congressman Sylvester Turner, a big piece of who we are. They took that out and put that with Sylvia Garcia's 29th congressional district. Well, those have never been represented by the same person until now. So they are really trying to go and pit our communities against each other, and they're trying to go do everything they can to dilute the representation that we have.
But that on its face is illegal. So I've told
Right.
people that there's a 2019 Supreme Court decision that said that partisan politics can play a role in the way that you redistrict. However, the Voting Rights Act prevents you from diluting voting rights and opportunities for people of color. But that's exactly on its face what's happening. But you and I both know that because you have a Trump DOJ now, again, led by the lady that would be fielding the complaints that you would bring if you accused this gerrymandering of happening right now by the Texas Republicans. Like, how does it impact somebody like you in your race for the 18th district now?
100%. Well, first off, it's made everybody just so confused, right? Because we have our current election under the old maps, and then we're going to have 3 months later, the primary election for the new maps. So, I mean, it's completely spliced everything up. I mean, it is absurd. I mean, the way that things have been done. Fortunately, I'm still in the 18th congressional district, but the new 18th congressional district is only 25% of the old one. So, I mean, to put this into perspective, we're going to have this big race for Congress. We're going to get through that. And then you're going to have to run in the 75% of a new district right after that.
Wait. So let me be clear. I'm not trying to be obtuse here. So you're going to run under map 1.0.
Right.
For the 18th. You have to run again under map 2.0?
Yep, in March. That'll be the primary for the next election.
See, and let me tell you why it's so insidious and evil, Isaiah. It's because it is expensive to run. It is hard to run. It is not easy to run in a state 100%. Like Texas when you're a Democrat. And now you have to do it twice in that short period of time?
Yep. Oh, and honestly, more than that, because if there's a runoff, which most of the time in Texas there are, you're going to run more than that. So here's the real calendar. You got our election in November. Probably will go to a runoff. That runoff will be in December. So that's 2 elections. Then you have the March primary. That probably also will go to a runoff, and then you got a primary for that. So you got 4 elections basically within about a 3 to 4 month time span, and you got to win them all.
Okay, we're going to get into the logistics of that in a second, but I want to go somewhere very serious, and I appreciate you're having some measure of just levity about it, but common sense levity, I guess. But you mentioned it a few minutes ago. You got arrested by the Department of Public Safety. Which, I mean, you have to laugh because it's so absurd, right? But you got arrested by the Department of Public Safety at one of these publicly open meetings where very few people were allowed to actually speak out about the proposed maps. And the crazy thing is the maps actually hadn't been introduced yet. So that was the kind of thing. It was like these kind of like almost like hypothetical conversations. But you got arrested just because you were expressing your beliefs about how absurd this redistricting was going to be.
I sure did. It was a crazy experience. I mean, look, they didn't like the fact. I mean, you could see it all in their faces. They were getting very red. They were very angry about what I had to say. And as they were taking me out, we had Officer Pillsbury Doughboy, as I call him. He went and fell on me.
He took you out, man, from the back.
Yeah,
like, that was
he did. I mean, completely. And not only once, but it was twice. They shoved me out of the door. And, as they get through there, I walk out of there. And I'm walking with them up to the outside portion of the Capitol. An officer comes back. He's a paramedic. He's looking at my ankle because my ankle was busted. My middle finger was busted.
Didn't they take you to the ground twice though, Isaiah? Because I was watching the video. In fact, you know what? What we're gonna do is so people get context and they understand. We're gonna play that video right now.
Remember you kindly for what you have done. They will not. As a matter of fact, history might not remember you at all because of what you have done. You need to have shame. History will not remember you for what you have done. It is a shame. It is horrific for what you have. Jesus, get over here. It's horrific for what you have done. You should all be ashamed.
Okay, so Isaiah, now we have some context here, right? So keep on going. So tell us what ends up happening after they take you down inside the room, and then they're taking you out of the room.
Right. So inside the room I go down, and then outside the room I go down, and then they are now then taking me outside of the Capitol. I go up an elevator, and so we got a paramedic that's looking at my ankle. None of the officers, because by the way, I'm one guy, and at this point they probably have like 12, 13, 14, 15 officers all around, right? None of them thought that anything was going to happen to me. They thought they were just going to say, okay, whatever, like, just go about your business. But then, like I said, Officer Pillsbury Doughboy gets a phone call. I don't know who the phone call was to, but he's on the phone with somebody. And then he comes up to me and he says, "You're going to be arrested." And I said, "What for?" And he says, "For trespassing,"
Huh?
which I thought was crazy. Trespassing at a taxpayer-funded state capitol that I was literally scheduled to speak at, and for resisting arrest. But none of them told me I was under arrest. So it was like,
Yeah, and I know we know because we could hear it. Thank gosh for
yeah,
social media and for people being thoughtful
right,
enough to have their cameras, because
right.
nobody said to you were under arrest at any point.
No, no. And I even said, like, "Who are you? Like, identify yourself. Like, what are you saying?" And so I said this to the officer, and I can't wait for the dash cam footage to come out too. This is gonna be great. We're just gonna put this out there. But I asked the officer, I said, "So what are you talking about?" And he says, basically, tell it to the judge. And next thing I know, I mean, they put me in handcuffs. They then put me in the car, and then they sent me to jail. I spent the next 4 hours in intake, which actually, Katie, was pretty cool because I actually got a chance to do a town hall in jail for the other inmates
Oh
that were
my
there.
God. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, and then then spent about 26 hours in solitary.
Okay, so that's the thing though. And I want people to hear, you spent another 26 hours. Man, they slow rolled this. I know they did,
Right,
Isaiah. They
100%,
intentionally
100%.
slow rolled this process of your intake and your processing. And in the
100%.
end, you end up getting released without any charges, right?
Yep, no charges at all.
Which we
And it
knew was
was
going to happen because
crazy.
for what charges
Right.
could they substantiate, right?
Right, right. But what was crazy about it, Katie, was that I had no idea that I was going to get out of jail. Like when I did, what happened was they came on the intercom because every cell has an intercom, and they said basically get your stuff and come to the front. And so I'm thinking I'm going to court because the little information I got at the time was that eventually I was going to see a judge and all of those things. So I'm thinking like, okay, I'm running for Congress. Like I got to get myself together. This might be on TV or whatever. Get down to the front to the first floor, and the officer says, "Well, you're going to make a right. You're going to get yourself and get out of here." And I was thinking to myself, and I read the 48 laws of power, right? Never interrupt your opponent when they're making a mistake. So I'm thinking like, okay, maybe they made a mistake. I don't know. So I go in and I put my stuff on. The last officer says, "Okay, all your charges have been dropped." And I go, wow. And I then look outside and I see all the TV cameras and I realize this thing had blown up. It's crazy.
Well, I was somebody who was particularly concerned about you being taken into custody. I was especially concerned because it was taking so long for you to
Yeah.
get out. But I'm not surprised, that they did this because listen, they did the same thing to Senator Padilla, right? I mean,
Yep.
people who are speaking truth to power and that are speaking out and demanding just answers. And that's the amazing thing. You were just saying to them that they needed to be honest about what was happening. They needed to
Right.
be honest with constituents and Texas residents about what was happening with this. And then I saw on some of the video, Isaiah, it was like this like bum rush of DPS and
Yeah.
other agents, some of whom are in
Right.
plain clothes, right? So you don't even know who the hell these
Right.
people are, which is another
Right.
typical kind of on brand thing for this administration.
Right.
But I was like, that's a lot of people from one black guy. I'm sorry, I
Right.
thought that.
Seriously.
I was like, that's a
Yeah.
lot. That's a lot of cops for one black guy who was already in custody and handcuffs. Anyway, Isaiah, I do think though that show of force from the Department of Public Safety, which again is absurd. The name, I don't know, they're keeping the public safe from you, just one small,
Yeah, I know, right?
one just guy. Anyway, the thing is though, the show of force, all kidding aside, that is a part of a bigger picture campaign of intimidation and fear tactics that they
Right.
want to do. They want to silence the opposition. And
Right.
in order to do so, now they're going to have even more congressional districts that are going to silence communities of color, minorities, and
Right.
people that are in opposition.
Right, 100%. And that's their main thing. Ultimately, these guys knew that these charges were BS, but ultimately they thought that if they could do this to me, it would then go and tell other people that wanted to testify at their hearings to not want to do it. But those Republicans are so stupid. All that ended up happening was it blew up 10 times bigger than anything they could have imagined. This is now at the forefront of the conversation in this country, as it should be. So, everything with these Republicans, they don't really think too much, and it backfired on them tremendously.
And I'm glad that you say that because when I was talking to Olivia, she reminded me of the phrase, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And I feel like,
Bravo.
I feel exactly. And I feel like the Texas House Dems, they eventually going to have to come back. And I do not want to be a Debbie Downer on this, but I do think it may be inevitable that we may end up getting MAP 2.0 to the governor's desk, and that may happen. But even if that happens, Isaiah, I am a firm believer that candidates like you and others, that you'll galvanize people to come and vote the right way. So Republicans may have picked up 5 new congressional, or tried to pick up 5 new congressional districts that may end up going to Democrats, is what I'm trying to say, right? Like maybe people
100%.
will look at this and say, how dare you manipulate my vote? This thing that is a sacred right. How dare you manipulate that in a way to try to cheat me of the value of what it is?
100%. Well, and especially no matter what, the Republicans, they cannot change the way that the people feel. And dealing with the fact that they're down 8 points in the generic ballot is nearly historic headwinds that is going to be very difficult for them. And they're going to be losing seats that they couldn't even have imagined losing just a couple months ago. So ultimately, they cannot change the fact that they've destroyed the economy. Life is unaffordable for people. They're doing nothing about it. They're raising prices with tariffs. All they're doing is making the richest richer, or making sure that regular people in this country are not getting anything to help them get ahead.
Isaiah, you and I had the privilege of meeting a while ago, but you were on the last iteration of the Katie Phang show when I was still on MSNBC.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons why I had you on was not only are you a young political office seeker, which I think is great. We need to have them young and we need them to be motivated, but you were one of the originals that said we have to fight fire with fire. Enough of these strongly worded letters. It's time for us to actually roll our sleeves up, get the work done, and fight the way that these fights need to be done. Tell people how they can support you, Isaiah, because again, all kidding aside, man, you've gone to jail in support of your values and to defend the rights of other people.
Absolutely. Well, if folks want to join this movement, because it is a movement to fundamentally change our country, they can go to isaiahmartin.org, ISAIAHMARTIN.org. They can find me on social media. I do a nightly TikTok town hall, and it's at Isaiah R. Martin. So I'm always transparent, always taking questions. Folks can chip in at isaiahmartin.org.
Isaiah, my friend, it's good to see you. I am glad that you're okay. And I am looking forward to having you come back and that we constantly stay in touch and touch base about what is happening, because your insight is a valuable part of us in this pro-democracy space. I always say knowledge is power. I want a high information America, and I want to empower my viewers that are here at the Katie Phang News Channel to be able to understand these issues better. So thank you so much for being here, Isaiah.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.